right, so we'll go ahead and get started. There's a couple more folks filtering in. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us tonight to learn about how you can take advantage of the New York State Homeowner Historic Tax Credit Program here in New York State. This series has been funded in part by a grant from the John E. Streb Fund for New York of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So we're really thankful to have this opportunity. I wanted to also send a big thank you to our co-sponsors, the Preservation Association of Central New York, or PACNY, the City of Syracuse, as well as the American Planning Association, New York Upstate Chapter for making available planning credits, and also the New York State Department of Education for making available their continuing education credits for architects. We're really glad to be able to bring those services to all of you today. We see a great variety of people out in the audience today. We're seeing a lot of people from Syracuse, which is great to see such a strong contingency, as well as some other folks from across the state, and additionally some folks from out of state. So we're really glad to have, planners, architects, developers, homeowners, and second homeowners all joining us tonight. So just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. We are going to be recording this program. It'll be available on the League's YouTube page following the next couple of days in case people did miss the first couple minutes of the program or miss a couple at the end. As I mentioned, and as the email you got earlier indicated, we are offering planning credits and architecture credits. So be sure you check that email for information on what you need to do to make sure those credits are recorded. And then the thing I would ask is if you are going after credits tonight, please make sure your full name is shown on your Zoom box so that I can make sure that you do get those credits accordingly. Another thing we ask is just please keep yourself muted while the speaker is presenting tonight. And then at the end, we're going to have a great question and answer session. So we really hope to engage you then. Please also feel free to use the chat function during the program to chat amongst participants, ask questions. If you do have a question for our speaker, it might be better to ask at the end just so the question doesn't get lost in the chat somewhere. That might be helpful for you. So just quickly before I turn it over to our guest speaker, I wanted to make sure everyone knew who the Preservation League of New York State was. Many of you are familiar with us, I know. We do provide a variety of services in order to protect our historic and cultural assets here in New York State, as well as lending help to revitalize our communities and participate in sustainable economic growth. So some services we provide include technical assistance. We're always here to answer questions on preservation or advocacy issues. We also are a clearinghouse for financial incentives, including the historic tax credit programs here that we promote. We also have a variety of programs that can be utilized by nonprofits and municipalities that we like to share with everyone. And in addition to that, we're really here to try to be the joining force for preservation in New York State and really love connecting with our regional colleagues on some of the great preservation things that are going on in New York. And by that same token, we love sharing those projects with everyone. So we do like to celebrate those through programs like our Excellence Awards, as well as highlighting resources that are threatened here in New York State through our biennial 7 to Save. So that's just a little bit of what we do. Here's some info on contacting us at the League and ways to reach me if you have questions. And so what I'd like to do tonight is I'd like to turn this over to Christina Vagvolgyi, who is a historic site restoration coordinator for the Community Engagement Unit of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. And she's going to let everyone know exactly what you need to know about the Homeowner Historic Tax Credit Program. Thank you.
There we go. How quickly can I unmute myself? Hello. I'm Christina Vagvolgyi. It's a weird name. It's not mine. I took it accidentally, and it's Hungarian, if you're wondering. And if anyone's Hungarian and you can tell me a different way to pronounce it, I will believe you because I'm not sure that I'm saying it correctly. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. So I am here to introduce all of you to the super fun historic tax credit. Are we good? You see us? Do we all see a slide? Yes, my screen is sharing. Good. But you can't say yes. I can't hear you. Duh. Okay, so the historic homeownership rehabilitation credit. I like to refer to it as it's like having a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon for your house. Basically, you get 20% of the cost of your qualified expenses on your project, up to $50,000 worth of credit in a taxable year on work that you do on your historic home. Your home has to be listed on the state or national registers of historic places and has to be in a qualifying census tract. I'm pretty sure the entire city of Syracuse is a qualifying census tract now because they changed some of the legislation. So if you're in Syracuse, you're in a qualifying census tract. If you know that you're in a historic district, good for you. And we will verify, that when you send in your application. The credit, it's not a deduction, it's a direct credit on what you owe the state of New York. So if you spend $10,000 on a project and you earn a $2,000 credit, that's $2,000 less dollars that you owe the state of New York on your taxes. So it takes directly away from what you owe the state. Other than meeting the criteria of being listed and being in a qualifying census tract, in order to qualify to claim the credit, you have your entire project has to be at least $5,000, and 5% of the work that you do has to be on the outside. And like stuff like mechanicals now, that counts as outside. So if you put in an air conditioning unit and you have a condenser on the outside of your house, that'll get you your 5% exterior. But a lot of times people will do a big interior project and they don't have anything on the outside, and we're just like, hey, paint your porch, do something, put on some new storm windows. The program currently goes through December 31st, 2024. We don't have any reason to believe that it wouldn't be renewed for another, I think they usually do it 5 years at a time. We don't know why the state would not renew it. They love this program, so we would expect it to go forward beyond that date. As of right now, as long as you have an application active in our office prior to that date, you would be allowed to finish out your project and still claim the credit, even if it's after that date. So that's just, a lot of people are confused. There's still some old literature out in the internet that says that it's already expired. We're good. We have the program. It's keeping us going. Let's see, how do I now advance my slide? Because it doesn't want to do that. There we go. So in case you want to look it up, the credit, it's part of a New York State consolidated tax law, blah, blah, blah. The important thing about that to realize is that the State Historic Preservation Office administers the application process in terms of reviewing the work that you do, but really this is Tax and Finance's program. They're the ones that offer the credit. The only way to claim the credit is on your tax filing. So you do the application through our office, we give you a certification, and then you use that with your tax filing. And another important part of this is that this is based on the tax law, so it is their rules. So some of the things that I'm going to tell you tonight, they're not rules that we made within our office. They're part of the way that the tax law is written. So there is like zero flexibility. Even if I want to be nice and be flexible, I don't have that option on some of these things because it is not our program, really. It is Tax and Finance's program. Okay, so I'm sorry, I moved a box off my screen and now I can't find it. So bear with me 1 second. There's that. And now I've unshared my screen. There we go. Okay, so another important thing to remember, the applications need to be submitted before the work starts. I'm going to go through the whole application form with you, but unless it's some sort of emergency situation where, your roof looks like this, or you had a tree fall on your house and you had to do the work before you could get your application in, or you just had to replace your boiler and then you heard about the program 3 days later. There's slight exceptions we can make, but again, it's the Tax and Finance rule that says the applications need to be submitted before the work starts. We have to, unfortunately also taken hard copy applications because we need to have original signatures on them. And there's a fee that's applicable to most people who apply. There is a fee for the review, and we need to take that in as a check. So you're going to end up having to send hard copies to us. We've been taking photos digitally recently, which has helped a lot of people, but we still need those to come in through snail mail. Reviews can take up to 30 days. Honestly, even right now with the pandemic and managing like not always being in the office, we're not really taking 30 days to review applications. We're getting them out to people more quickly than that. So, and especially if you have something like you have a contractor and they are ready to go, you can always talk to our office and we can figure something out. Even if we haven't had a chance to fully process your application, we can give you a go ahead to get your work going so that you're not held up. And another thing to keep in mind is you claim the credit not necessarily in the year that you spend the money, but it's the year that you get your Part 3 certification. So that was extremely relevant recently because we had so many Part 3 applications coming in right up until December 31st. And basically we need to receive your completed application by December 31st of the year that you want to claim it. So 2020, if you wanted to claim it on your 2020 taxes, it would have had to come to us by that date so that we could get you that relevant letter. That doesn't mean that if you send in an application tomorrow and then do work this year that you have to send us your Part 3 before the end of this year. If your work takes a couple of years, that's fine. If you want to wait until next year to close it out and claim the credit, you can keep it open. We don't penalize you for keeping it open. It's just that you can't file for the credit until you've closed it out and you use the credit on the year that we get you that certification. So we recently updated the application form. It's a little bit simpler. The Part 1 and 2 used to be separate sheets and it didn't really make sense, so we kind of married them. It's still considered a 3-part application, but Part 1 and 2 are now combined. This gives us some basic information about your home, has a checklist of things to include. We're going to need just some general photos of the outside of your house, just so that we can make sure that, yeah, it's the right house that we think that it is based on our database. And it helps us to also, have up-to-date photos of the homes. And then you also need to include photos of all the areas where you're going to do work. So keep in mind that I can't come to your house and see everything. So I need you to be my eyes and take photos of all the areas where you're going to do work, because we use the before and after photos to verify that you did the work according to what you said you were going to do. There's a project worksheet that explains the work. So all those things on that checklist at the bottom. If you live in a local preservation district in Syracuse and you are required to apply to the Preservation Board in Syracuse, and you have gotten their approval prior to applying to us, if you include that approval, mostly it's just pertaining to exterior work, because I don't know that they review interior work, but if you include that with your application to us, 99% of the time, we would never overturn something that they have accepted. So it makes our review of your application easier if you can just attach that approval with your application. If you have plans, you don't have to include them. If you've hired an architect and they have plans, great, shoot those in with your application. If you have any product information, like if you're replacing your windows and you have the info sheets from Anderson, anyone, no one specific, I didn't say that. You can include that with your application. There's also the processing fee that you would include. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but there is a notary box because people whose income is $60,000 or below are not subject to the review fees. So in that case, you need to have the form notarized. You don't need to submit a fee, but you would have to get the form notarized so that you're attesting to that claim that you're making about your income. I can't make that okay. So the worksheet is very basic. You just, if you're going to replace your roof, you explain to us what your roof is, what the new roof is going to be, and the estimated cost. You don't have to wait for a contractor to give you the exact precise amount that they're going to charge for the work. Sometimes that holds people up from submitting their applications. you can just, you know, whatever your best estimated guess is of what the work's going to cost, because really the costs that you indicate at the part 2 are just like a placeholder. What matters is when you report the actual expenditures at the last step. So if these costs end up changing, which most of the time they do, that's okay. You don't need to send us anything extra. Just let us know at the final stage what the actual expenditures were. So you fill that out, you sign your form, you send it to us. There are lots and lots of qualified rehabilitation expenses. If you download the application instructions from our website, there's an appendix at the back of it, and it has a list. It's not a complete list of everything, but it has examples of eligible and ineligible expenses. So many things. I don't need to read the list because you guys can, I assume, can all read, but you know, mostly anything you would do on the outside of your house, you know, painting, anything like that, windows, if they are appropriate windows. There's also so many things on your interior. If you want to put in a whole new kitchen, unless you have some sort of historic, you know, stone hearth that has value, we're not going to scrutinize you ripping out your kitchen and putting in a new kitchen. So, hey, you might as well get 20% off of your new cabinets and countertops and things. One thing to keep in mind is if you yourself are doing the labor, you can't put in any cost for you doing the work. You can claim the cost of materials, not tools, but materials, things that actually stay in the house. So, you know, screws and hinges and knobs and cabinet doors. If you're putting in that stuff, you can claim the cost of it. That's eligible. One thing to keep in mind, I'm not sure, I don't think I've had really that many solar applications for Syracuse, but solar panels are an eligible expense and they do count towards exterior work. It's hard because a lot of times it's not really your choice of where you would put the panels. The company's going to come and say, this is where you have to put them. And if they tell you you have to put them like on the front of your house, you know, on the slope of the roof in the front of your house, that's not something we would approve. I worked really hard with a homeowner in Buffalo to make sure that the panels that he put on were set back far enough from the, you know, from the visible street that he was able to, you know, get this credit. I think there's also a NYSERDA credit. And so that worked out really well. So definitely if you're considering doing solar and you want to try and get this credit from us, we're happy to work with you, you know, before you even submit an application so that you can get it right so we can get you the credit. So things that don't qualify. A good way to think of it, someone at the Park Service explained this to me once, that if you were to pick the house up and shake it, anything that doesn't come loose qualifies. And it's also anything you wouldn't take with you. So technically, if you were selling your house, you could take your washer and dryer, you could take your oven. Even dishwashers are considered, even though they're built in under the countertops. But barring appliances such as that, everything else counts in terms of mechanicals, like, you know, a hot water heater counts, but, you know, in the wall oven doesn't. Outside the building footprint, that is not eligible. So only work on your actual home within the footprint of your home. No landscaping, no tree removal. If you have systems like a sewer line that's tied into the plumbing of your home and the work has to be done outside of the footprint, then that can count. But also, unfortunately, detached outbuildings don't count. So a lot of historic homes have, you know, a carriage house or a garage that was original to the home and it even, you know, is built in a similar style. Unless it is physically attached to the house, that would not count either. So there's an amendment sheet that's part of the application that you can use if you've sent in your part 1, 2, and you've gotten your approval and then something else comes up or you decide to do some additional work. All you do is you fill this out. We have started accepting these digitally. As long as you've signed it, you can scan it and send it in to us and send us the photos. And you can add work to your project. You don't, like I said before, you don't need to let us know if it's just a change in the cost, but if you want to add work, or if you're, you know, completely changing something. Like I actually had someone who was going to put on a composite roof instead of slate, and then it turns out they were able to do slate. So they sent me an amendment sheet. It was like the greatest amendment sheet I got to say like, oh no, we're doing slate. So there is no fee associated with sending in the amendment form. You can send in as many of you want. I had someone in Rochester who sent me 12 amendments in for one project over the course of, I don't know, 2 years. It was a lot. But it worked and she got the credit. So the part 3 comes when the work is done and you're ready to claim the credit in that tax year. It's again, very basic information. There's a checklist of things. You're going to fill out that worksheet again, describing that work that you did. Hopefully, if you've done things correctly, all the items that you include on your part 3 were previously included on a part 2 or on an amendment, because sometimes people try to sneak things in and we don't always catch it, but you know, if we do, then we sometimes have to tell people, hey, you know, we didn't have approval for that ahead of time. So that comes to us. The part 3 fee, there's been a lot of confusion. I don't know if it's the way it's worded in the instructions or that it's not upfront on our website, but if you are subject to the fee for the part 2 is always just $25. The fee for the part 3, it's on a sliding scale and it depends on what your total project expenditures are. I don't actually have a slide of what the actual fee structure is. I think the highest is $475, but that's for like a $200,000 project. But so the part 3 fee is separate and it's based on what your project expenses are. So you submit your photos, your application, your check, and then we get you a certification letter and you get your tax credit. If you own a multifamily home, or if you have some sort of business function, a home office in your home, you could still qualify for the credit, but you have to consider the percentage of the home that you live in, and shared expenses, exterior work and work on shared spaces, which is attics or basements, you can only claim a portion of that work. So if you own a 2-family home and you live in 50% of the overall square footage, if you replace your roof, you can only claim 50% of the cost of the roof because it's on the outside. Anything you do within your living unit, you can claim that free and clear. If you do any work within the rental unit, that doesn't count. I just had someone email me today about their home office and it's 10% of the square footage. And so they would have to reduce any exterior expenses by 10% if that's what they claim on their taxes. The important thing is if you claim some sort of business or office space inside your home on your taxes, then that's the percentage that you would indicate to us when you're filling out the form. There's also a commercial tax credit. We have very rarely had someone be able to use both of them. It can be done, but the criteria for what you need to spend to qualify for the commercial credit is so much higher that if you have a full gut rehab of your 2-family house, give me a call and we'll talk about it separately because it might work for you, but 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work for just a regular homeowner who needs to do a few little projects. Oh, this is sort of what I was just explaining, the commercial tax credit. I got ahead of myself. It's a separate program about it. There are people in the office that would be happy to talk to you about it. I used to be one of those people. I'm not anymore, but you could ask me a question. I would be able to answer it, hopefully, accurately. I think that's the end. That's me. I have to try and figure out how to stop sharing my screen. There we go. Hello. I lost your faces while I was talking, so I don't know if I was being reacted to negatively. So I guess maybe that's a good thing.
That's what we just have to get used to in this virtual world, is talking.
Right. I moved the box and I couldn't get it back. So I was, you know, just talking to myself.
Well, thank you so much for that overview, Christina. I mean, the homeowner program, I promise it's not that scary. I know many of you probably have some experience with it, and then there's others who probably are less experienced with it. So to those who are newer, I'd say don't get overwhelmed. The people at SHPO are fantastic. Christina and her team are more than happy to walk people through, what needs to be done. And they're really there to help you, get what you can in terms of the historic tax credit. Really thank everyone for, joining us for this hour tonight. This was a great way to kick off our series. So if you do want to come back and join us from now to March, we've got 5 more of these. So we will have some more folks back from SHPO. If you're more interested in the commercial program, there's going to be a similar program on February 10th, which is going to go over the commercial credit use. So that will be really interesting for you. And then other than that, just plan on keeping in touch with us and letting us know at the league how we can help you, and also how we can put you in touch with the folks at SHPO to get these projects going. So thank you so much, everyone.